Okay, it's Province Sports columnist Ed Willis here with my learned colleague from Victoria, Mike Smith. Now, the idea of this is we're going to kind of do a point-counterpoint on British Columbia's bid for the 2026 World Cup of Soccer, but the way things have evolved, it's more like a point. I was going to say, Mike, you ignorant slut. He was going to come back and we were going to have this fearsome argument, but we've kind of come to a meeting point here. I understand now the risk involved and also just the nature of doing business with FIFA. And I think somewhere along the line, people have to just stand up and say, no, this won't stand. But let's get into some of the details. Mike, what did your reporting tell you about this deal?
Well, it's nice that you've seen the light, Ed. This is great. But
you know, me and Paul on the road to Damascus, right?
Yeah. But you know what? I'm a soccer fan. I think it would have been great to have a cup, 2 or 3 World Cup games in Vancouver. I think that would have been pretty cool. But I'm also a taxpayer of this province, and it's my hard-earned money that I send to the government. I expect them to use it wisely. And when you take a look at the terms of this deal with FIFA, this is an organization that's been charged with money laundering and racketeering and wire fraud. Do I want to spend tens of millions of dollars of my tax money and your tax money to do a deal with an organization like that to get 2 or 3 soccer games? Hell no. I think it was a sucker deal, and I think the government for once did the right thing by saying no to it, and we can certainly get into the reasons why. I think I'm the only reporter who's taken a real close look at some of the details of the agreement. I've seen a copy of the the host city agreement. I've seen a copy of the risk analysis that was done by Pavco, which is the Crown Corporation that owns BC Place Stadium. And to me, it was just outrageous, the terms from FIFA. So I'm glad we're walking away from it.
See, and you know, when the story first broke initially, I weighed some of those things, and believe me, I don't have any blinders on when it comes to FIFA. I just thought, you know, given our history in the last 10, 15 years as a global destination point for world sports, all the great things that have happened as our city, you know, the Olympics, the 2015 World Cup, the Rugby Sevens has turned into this massive global event. It's been great for our city. I thought that, coupled with our place in soccer in this country, and I think BC is really the ancestral home of soccer in Canada, I thought that outweighed those concerns. But again, you know, through your reporting, through Bob Mackin's reporting, through a lot of the details have emerged, you get angry that FIFA is just so intractable. They have this overwhelming sense of entitlement. I thought they might have been better given everything they went through in 2015, what with the FBI and Interpol barging into their offices in Zurich. They might have, you know, been a kinder, gentler organization, but that hasn't been the case. But let's talk about some of the details, Mike.
Sure. Well, let's talk about security, for example, the cost of security for staging 2 or 3 soccer games in Vancouver. I know for a fact this is one of the things that completely freaked out the BC government when they started pushing back against FIFA on this. Because if the people remember the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver, the original price tag for security for that event was $175 million. It ended up costing around $1 billion. I know the BC government looked very closely at the experience of the World Cup in Brazil in 2014, where they spent $900 million on security there. And they had to develop a massive video surveillance system. They had to train their police and their first responders in how to deal with potential chemical terror attacks, things like that. So the BC government took a look at this and said, wait a minute here, what is this going to cost us? What are the precise deliverables and what we have to do? And FIFA didn't want to put a price tag on it. They didn't want to tell them what it was going to be. It was just sort of sign in the dotted line. We'll explain it all to you later. It was like, forget it, you know? And one thing that the BC government did, Ed, was they tried to get the federal government to pay for security here. And they couldn't get that permit. They couldn't get that confirmation from the feds. The federal government has only put $5 million on the table for this thing. That's peanuts. You know, that's one of the other problems here. We would have got stuck with a big tab here for, 2 or 3 soccer games? It was a bad deal.
Yeah, you know, and given the history of FIFA, I think we know they're not exactly looking for shortcuts or looking to cut costs once they get into the deal and once they have that quick story. And I think, you know, it probably doesn't have a lot to do with what we're talking about, but it reveals so much about their mindset. I remember being in the media workroom for one of the Women's World Cup games, and they had the photographers, they had this meeting with the photographers, and they went around and checked everybody's water bottle to make sure they all had FIFA approved water bottles in case, God forbid, one of them ended up on the TV screen. So that kind of tells you. Let's, Mike, the other thing that really interested me about your reporting was the way the TV revenues were divvied up. Can you get into that?
Well, one of the first things when this story broke that I asked the cabinet minister responsible was, okay, I understand your concerns about this deal, but what about the other side? What about the revenue flowing to government? I mean, we own BC Place, right? It's a publicly owned stadium. Do we get a cut of the ticket sales there? Do we get a cut of the TV rights? What about the merchandising that they're going to sell at the stadium? Do we get a share of that? Forget it. We don't get any of that. That all stays exclusively with FIFA. So we don't get any of the profits. We just get the costs. So in the security was one thing. Then you got to start taking a look at the demands from FIFA to stage the World Cup. They wanted not just one natural grass field installed at BC Place Stadium. They wanted two. They wanted one installed and another one on backup just in case something went wrong with the first one. They wanted two separate power supplies to BC Place Stadium. There's only one now. They would have had to install a completely separate power grid for BC Place. They also had an exclusive access clause here where BC Place would effectively be shut down for 2 months, and then there would be a controlled zone around the stadium where there would be no unauthorized advertising or commercial activity allowed, and it would be the responsibility of Vancouver and the taxpayers of British Columbia to police that and to protect FIFA's commercial interests. I mean, I'm going to have more on this today, by the way, Ed. I encourage my column today on the website because I got a copy of one of the actual host city agreements. It's got even more of the outrageous contract terms for this deal, and I think they did the right thing walking away from it.
Well, one final question, Mike, and I'm not sure if this has come out yet. I haven't read it. I mean, so they want to basically they wanted to lock up BC Place for 2 months. What were they willing to pay for that? What was the rental agreement for BC Place?
Well, I don't believe there's any rental agreement. They didn't get into any kind of revenue like that. I mean, basically, the terms of the deals that I was seeing was that we just agreed to give them the stadium. Which, by the way, they have the right to rename the stadium for the duration of that period as well. There's all kinds of other crazy stuff. Here's one last thing I would just say, though. Here's another thing, Ed. It wasn't just a sucker deal, I think, for British Columbia, but I think for all of Canada. This is supposed to be a unified bid to host the World Cup by Canada, the United States, and Mexico. The United States gets 60 games, 60, and we get 10. What kind of a unified deal is that? I think we should have driven a harder bargain and at least got more games, more guarantees we're going to get top-level teams, more guarantees we're going to get training sites and training camps. There's none of that in this deal. It was a lousy deal, and they did the right thing by walking away from it.
No, yeah, it's funny. Like, FIFA is always willing to pay the humanitarian, soccer is unifying force, these kumbaya moments, and then when they sit down with the business, at the business table, it's like negotiating with an organized crime family. So yeah, again, thanks for setting my mind straight on this, Mike. I think I'm so much more clear. My mind is right on this now. Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you, Ed.